The Front Row Show does not reflect the views of Utah State Athletics, or its affiliates.
Excuse me, what the hell's going on out here?
And I wish I could say something that was classy and inspirational, but that just wouldn't be our style.
Stick this in your trophy case.
Football is rapidly approaching, and we're ranking our top 5 Aggies crucial to the 2013 Utah State football season. This is the Front Row Show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of the Front Row Show. We are your hosts. I'm Matt Sonnenberg.
I'm Lance Rasmussen.
And I'm Jeff Browning. Front Rowers everywhere, make sure you're following us on Twitter at USU Front Row. Check out the new YouTube page that's up that we've created at USU Front Row. Again, the Facebook page is always up for your enjoyment. Shout out to our Front Rowers everywhere. Thank you for tuning in tonight. It's tonight, guys. Not this morning.
We're going at nighttime, which means things are getting a little zany here.
We found out we are, a little bit more zany, a little bit more crazy at night compared to during the day. Matt's more awake.
That is more awake, and with Lance on board now, he's also a late nighter. So we're kind of taking it back to late night here,
rolling it down,
which means
great.
Things are they might stay crazy for everyone here, and we're just dragging Jeff and Trevor's sleep schedules down the drain with us.
Brilliant.
We put out there to front rowers everywhere, who are the 5 most important players for Utah State this year? This is going to be our topic of discussion tonight. And we're not looking who are the 5 most players that Utah State can't afford to lose. I think we already know that list. But guys, who are the 5 guys, in order for Utah State to have that dream season that we all crave, that if not for a couple of missed field goals last year, we would have had? Who are our 5? I'll start off with mine. Number 5 in my top 5 is Nevin Lawson, guys, the cornerback. We all loved Will Davis and what he did last year. And Will is one of my favorite Aggies in the past 10 years.
Friend of the program as well.
Good friend of the show. Shout out to Will in Miami. He was really the focal point last year in that defensive backfield. I kind of feel like Nevin kind of got lost, and a lot of people forgot about Nevin. But let's not forget, he's the senior leader in the defensive backfield now. He's been there for 4 years as a starter. This is his year to kind of rise up and shine. And you can't underestimate that senior leadership in the backfield. He had 47 solo tackles last year, which means once he's in a tackling position, no one's getting by him. No one breaks his tackles. He's a solid tackler, and he's going to be going up against better receivers in the Mountain West Conference than were in the WAC last year. It's important that Nevin establish himself as the leader back there and as a shutdown corner opposite Tay Glover Wright.
See, along with that, on that note about him, his tackles, if you ever watch him and pay attention to his games, he is excellent at tackling in the open field, which is difficult to do.
His run stopping, too, is incredible.
Yeah, and it's not just like he's getting to guys and tripping them up. No, he's putting his helmet into their chest and taking them down.
Yeah.
And making solid form tackles. And, you're right. It makes him crucial. For my number 5, I'm going on the other end of that. My number 5 is Devontae Glover Wright. I feel like at this point with Nevin Lawson, we kind of know we've got a solid player there. He's been started for 2 years now already. Whereas Glover Wright, he was kind of the Swiss Army football player last year with us. Was he a safety? Was he a cornerback? Was he a kick returner? Was he a quarterback at times? And we didn't get to see him settle into any role. But what we did see is that he is an excellent, excellent athlete, capable of doing a lot of things on the football field. And that's why I think the coaching staff felt capable or comfortable in throwing him out there, because they believed he was capable. I think with Will Davis gone, we need another guy to kind of step in and be that big-time athlete on the corners, because Lawson's going to do his job. He's going to do it well. Mm-hmm. But Tay Glover Wright has that shutdown corner potential, and in a lot of ways, like how Will Davis stepped up last year to really establish himself as a top cornerback as a senior, I think Glover Wright can do that this year.
He's a freak athlete.
And one last thing is, we have a lot of good cornerbacks on this roster. I think Rashard Stewart, possibly Liddell Jackson, Devin Centers, Jeremy Morris, Marwin Evans, all those guys could potentially see time or at least compete for it this year. But, Tay Glover Wright is an athletic specimen. This guy is so fast and so quick. And that's why I think if he has an excellent year, our defensive backfield is going to be in really good shape.
To me, there's a reason Nevin has been playing significant minutes since he's a freshman. That's because he's good. I mean, he's awfully good. I remember
sticks to receivers like glue.
He does, and I remember a play. It was his freshman year. It was like the spring game of the freshman year, and I think it was Kerwin, and we all know how fast Kerwin is. He broke through the line, and Nevin, on a dead sprint from the opposite corner, tracks him down across the field and saves a touchdown. His speed, I think, is something we kind of have forgotten about in a lot of ways. I think Tay is going to be an excellent shutdown corner. But there's also nothing wrong with having two shutdown corners, especially in the Mountain West.
Well, and I think that's something that we come from last year. Is we actually did play a lot of teams with some pretty good talent on in receiver. La Tech comes into mind with Patton, and you always had Will Davis lined up. The majority of the time, if they're playing a man situation, Will Davis was lined up there, which put a lot of stuff on Lawson to go and take care of. Because if they have to be double teaming with the safety, all of a sudden he's going to be in man coverage on solo defense against the second best receiver on the other team.
Which is what I think he's great at.
And he's fantastic.
I think one of the things that people overlook a lot of times is Nevin Lawson has gotten a handful of pass interference penalties in his career, but it's because he's so good at sticking right with guys.
And he's smart about it.
And there are a couple times, Lance, you bring up the La Tech game. There are a couple key moments in that game where it was not Will Davis lined up on Quentin Patton. It was Nevin Lawson, including Nevin breaking up a potential touchdown in the first half that La Tech was driving on. And actually, I think that was the same drive that Will picked off Kobe Cameron and ended the NCAA record-breaking streak of no passes without an interception. Who's your fifth?
For me, I'm actually, since we're already talking about him, Glover Wright's coming in on my number 4 pick on my list. And the reason why is because that is one of the big questions on everything, is what's going to be going on in that defensive backfield. And the thing is, wait, I got to keep talking about Glover Wright for a second here. I haven't had a chance to run on him. But my thing about Glover Wright is we know Nevin Lawson's going to be picking up, and basically we need Glover Wright to come in and step in and fill the role that Nevin Lawson had last year. He needs to be the one who's going to be the second, not necessarily like saying that there's any sort of differentiation between the two, but we need him to be able to go and be the far side and have two lockdown corners that are going to be able to shut down a lot of the quarterbacks are coming up against, because we're going up against really the class of the nation when it comes to quarterbacks. I don't know if there's a better quarterback conference in the nation this year than what the Mountain West is.
We were talking about that the other day, and it is stacked right now.
So my number 5 to complement that is going to be our new safety, Maurice Alexander.
Ooh, I like it.
I don't know how many of you. There's going to be a lot of people out there who will remember what he was able to do as a linebacker. Then there's going to be more people out there who remember what he was able to accomplish as a steamroller in the spring game, and watching him hit people. Watching his speed and athleticism out of the backfield, and watching, and I know Matt's already brought this up on a couple occasions, but his ability to read run and get to the line to be able to stop things.
So quick to the play.
You remember, and once again, I think the important thing about Alexander is he's filling a role that we had someone who was just steady with last year, someone who you could literally wire their jaw shut, and they would try to sneak back into games after breaking things so they could go make plays. I mean, you had Brady was making my favorite play of his last year. Was it the La Tech game where he made the midair hit in the end zone to take the guy out of bounds, so it was no longer a completion for a touchdown? Yep. We need that kind of tenacity, and I know that Maurice Alexander is going to be bringing that to the table.
We're all talking, the defensive backfield for our 5th, and the thing I like about all these guys that we're talking about, these guys are hitters. I mean, they are headhunter assassins, and they don't mind laying the big hit. I think there's a lot of teams with particularly corners, that they try and get too chitsy, a little too cute with it, and they just try and bat things down. I mean, these guys will wrap you up and pile drive you into the ground.
Well, especially in Alexander's case, his size, to have that size that he has, he's got linebacker size at the free safety position. That is
with him roaming on the
field.
Yeah.
That's got to be terrifying. One, for opposing receivers that want to dare go over the middle, and 2, for any opposing running backs that think, all right, I broke through the first line, oh crap.
Number 4 in the countdown. My 4th is Travis Reynolds, guys. So much has been made of Utah State's wide receivers and how there needs to be a step-up go-to receiver. I'm not convinced that this is an offense that you need a 2,000-yard receiver like a Quentin Patton, like a Noel Grigsby from San Jose. You don't need that with us. But what you need is a wide receiver who can keep defenses honest, so they can't stack the line, so that our running backs have the ability to not only run through the gaps that our terrific offensive line will create, but also catches out of the backfield is a big part of our offense. Travis Reynolds, to me, is that guy. He's been here the longest out of any wide receivers. Last year, he had 25 receptions for 244 yards, a 9.8 average, only 1 touchdown. There's so many unknowns at the wide receiver position. To me, he's got to be the guy who steps up, takes the bull by the horns, and provides that deep threat that really, if we're going to make this work, if we're going to make this serious run at a special year, you got to have a wide receiver who steps up and takes it.
Lance, you already said your number 4, Tay Glover Wright. My number 5. So, I mean, obviously, excellent choice. My number 4, I'm going to keep it short and sweet, Nick Diaz. You got to have the kicking game locked down. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it more as things go on, but you got to have that kicking game locked down. He was great once he got the job last year. He needs to keep that up. It's a matter of him just actually doing it at this point and delivering on what we've seen he can do.
Number 3 in the countdown. I went with Kevin Wimpy, guys, the left tackle, the protector of Chucky's blind side. If you know, everyone who knows football knows how important the blind side protection is for the quarterback. It is essential that the quarterback understand that he is protected well. Chucky was sacked 17 times last year, and Chucky is really, I mean, the motor that makes this thing work. And if he's injured, if he is getting sacked constantly, it's not good for Utah State. When the quarterback is comfortable, everything else, runs smooth as butter. And so in order for do that, Kevin has got to have a big year at the left tackle position in keeping Chucky's blindside safe.
I think along with that, his position is the most crucial because as good of a runner as Chucky is, for a guy coming around for that opposite end, he's going to have little time to recognize that and react to it. While he might be able to outrun a lot of DNs and outside linebackers, he still needs to get a head start. He can't be going from stationary to full speed while they're already coming at him full speed. If a guy comes through the middle or comes from the right side, chances are he'll recognize it. And we've seen his improvement as a runner from his freshman year to his sophomore year. He'll recognize that and he'll make a play out of it. But coming from the left side makes it that much more crucial that he at least has the time to recognize it, or ideally there's just no one coming through.
And on top, I mean, we saw my favorite instances in the Auburn game when you see they even comment on it during the game, you see his ability to roll out, recognize on those instincts, but you still got to be able to give him the chance. I mean, that's not going to happen every time, obviously.
Yeah.
Can I throw out a quick stat here, though?
Throw it out, man.
For my Chucky, we discovered this last week, for my Chucky Keaton moment of the night, he has yet to have a fumble in his college career.
This is
been
true.
Tracked. And I had no idea about that, but in every sack he's had in 2 years has not fumbled the ball as our quarterback.
Solid.
And I'm knocking on the wood of the place where we're at recording at the moment, saying then we won't mess that up for the next season. But I think that is a key stat that as far as turnovers go, he has yet to fumble the ball.
Well, and really, I think with Kevin, it's not just Kevin. I mean, it is really the whole offensive line. How cool is it to have the whole offensive line returning? I mean, you have Tyler Larson, Eric Schultz, Jimmy Markosian, the other Wimpy. It's Kyle Wimpy. It's great to have that continuity, and I think that will pay big dividends. That, those 17 sacks last year, I think those will go down dramatically because when you have that continuity, especially on the offensive line, a whole offseason of working together, it's going to be a very solid unit, both offensive line and quarterback.
And chemistry is a big part of the offensive line, too. I mean, I played it in high school. Well, I was on the team with that. But it's one of those things where you got to be able to recognize, shifts that happen in the defense. And these guys got to be on the same page to recognize and call things out of adjustments they're going to make at the line. And there's a trust of knowing that the guy next to you is going to recognize the same thing that you recognize. And I'm sure, that right there counts for a ton with their experience. But also in the case of Kevin, I have no doubt that he's probably done a lot this offseason at trying to improve his lateral movement because I think that's why he's on this list. That's why it's a little bit of a concern is we saw some games where he was iffy and he, no question, got a lot better as the year went on. But take his first start, for example, against Wisconsin. I mean, it's tough to hold that too much against him because Wisconsin's a great team that had great DNs, great linebackers. But he was struggling, especially with his lateral movement. And I there's just no way he hasn't worked his butt off this offseason to try and improve that. And I'm excited to see that pay off, because I think if he's made a solid improvement there, this line is going to be out of this world.
Well, and that was, for me, when I showed up tonight, there was a strong part of me that wanted to put my top 5 as our 5 starters on the O-line and just say these guys are going to be where everything flows out of. If Chucky's got time to pass to whatever receiver shows up, it's because of the O-line. If our running backs succeed, it's because of the O-line. I don't have any doubts really that as long as that unit is functioning to the best of its possibilities, we're going to be great.
Agreed.
Number 3 for me is going to be Robert Marshall.
Interesting.
It's kind of an interesting pick for me. The thing that really gets me about Robert is a couple years ago when you saw him come out running basically a 4th running back spot behind Turbin, Michael Smith, Kerwin Williams, and then you had Marshall come in. And I remember I don't even remember who said it to me, but they said, "Man, that guy runs like a fist," just like, and you would watch him punch lines. The thing is, we've got Joe Hills, who's going to be able to be a speed back out of the backfield this year. We've got Mookie Lee, who also should be something of a speed back.
I love Kelvin Lee. Love him.
I think DiMartino's going to be able to come in and run some work, but we really need a sizable 1 to 2 yards, 3rd down back who's going to be able to come in and work us.
The Thunder to complement the Lightning.
The Lightning that's going to be coming in, yeah. And I think Robert Marshall has had and proven over the seasons that we don't need him to be breaking off 60-yard runs. We don't need him to be breaking off 10-yard runs. We need him to be coming in and going, all right, we need 3 yards out of this next play. I'm going to be the man to pick up and do it. And I think that's one of the big keys for me is who's going to be able to come in and fill that 3 and 4 spot in our running back depth. And I think Robert Marshall's the man to do it.
My number 3, I'm sticking at the same position, but I'm going Joe Hill. I mean, we've heard the hype. We had Matt Austin and Will Davis come on, and they said they think, a lot of the guys on the team think that out of the running backs we've put in the NFL, out of the running backs of recent years, Robert Turbin, Michael Smith, Kerwin Williams, Joe Hill, a lot of guys on the team apparently think Joe Hill is going to be the best out of all those guys, which when I first heard gave me a mix of goosebumps and just, I guess, skepticism, because we haven't seen enough. We've seen flashes. Joe Hill's shown flashes of being very, very good. Mm-hmm. We know he is lightning quick. Yeah. As straight up and down runner, so fast. Can he absorb the hits, though? Can he slide off tacklers like a Kerwin Williams or a Robert Turbin could? That's kind of my concern at this point. We need him to be able to do that. And if he lives up to this hype, if he can be that go-to feature running back that he is kind of going to be called upon to be this year, that gives the offense the most important weapon we need, in my opinion.
Well, and you talk about weapons. I mean, Kerwin Williams was not only the team's leading rusher, he was the leading receiver last year as well. And so that running back position is so versatile in Utah State's offense. You have to have someone that not only is great at the in-between tackle runs, he has to be great at outside runs, which we all saw Joe Hill do excellently last year. I mean, Southern Utah, but then also in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, coming off an injury, he scored the last touchdown of the game, and his run was great because he bounces, he cuts through it, but then he bounces to the outside, and the Toledo defenders are just twisting and turning. They have no idea where he is. He is just that elusive. And I like Robert Marshall. I like your point on that because, he's someone that last year was injured. He's kind of been forgotten a little bit, but has there ever been a guy who is more physically imposing as a running back? I mean, maybe Turbin, but Robert Marshall is a freak.
Between the tackles, Robert Marshall delivers, in my opinion, quite a bit more oomph as Robert Turbin. He's not going to break him off with big plays like Turbin would, but he will make a D lineman or a linebacker and that's regret hitting him.
And he'll average 3.5 yards a game.
He will.
But that's all he needs to be doing.
Very crucial.
And that's as long as we need 3 yards, that's exactly what we need him doing.
Especially with a great O-line in front of him.
Mm-hmm. Number 2, I have Chucky Keaton, guys, as my number 2. As the quarterback goes, the rest of the team goes. If Utah State aspires to a great, even potentially BCS busting year, you look at all the great non-AQ BCS busting teams, the Boise States or TCU, Utah, they all had great quarterbacks. They all had someone who took command, who could make the plays when they needed to be made. The biggest thing for me this year with Chucky is just limiting mistakes. I think we saw a couple times in the spring game, and it's the spring game. I understand. There was a couple balls that I think he just threw up just to see if his receivers will get it. Consistency at limiting mistakes, knowing when I just throw the ball out of bounds and we'll just take it what it is and we'll live to play another day. That's something he's really improved on from his freshman to his sophomore year. I think he'll only get better as a junior year. The thing with Chucky, that he's always reminded me of a Colin Kaepernick at Nevada. And he's not as tall as Colin is, but he's that same type of shifty runner that just does enough to just tick you off if you're the opposing team because you just can't seem to bring him down. I remember when Nevada played here a couple years ago with Colin Kaepernick, and it was a game we actually could have had the chance to win if we'd gotten the onside kick. But Utah State had Nevada, I think it was a 3rd and 11. It was late in the game. And Colin Kaepernick scrambles and gets the first down, and it was just a backbreaker of a play. And I think that's actually the drive that they took the lead on because of that. And it just made you go, ugh, because you had him, and he got out. And Chucky does the same type of things. I've been rewatching as part of my Aggie football craving that I can't seem to satisfy. I've gone back and I've pretty much watched every game that's been on ESPN last year. And there's a couple games, particularly the La Tech game and also the Utah game, where Chucky does the same thing. It's 3rd and long, or it's 3rd and 5. We need a first down to sustain the drive. And he has full confidence to pull the ball and say, I got this. And he gets it every time.
If I'm not mistaken, in the Utah game in overtime, was it not 3rd and 11?
It was.
When he had that epic scramble? I mean, did we not name that our play of the year?
We did.
In the Blue Couch Awards? Because that was one of those plays where, I mean, Utah had kind of stifled our offense. We'd been struggling to put up points since earlier in the game. And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, they got us 3rd and 11. This is huge. They stop us here. We don't want to trust our kicking game at that point. And here comes Chucky rolling out, making just an epic play to set up the winning touchdown.
Well, and my favorite thing there is the announcer literally said this was open the play before. Why isn't he going for it? And you can see that Chucky went, I'm not missing this again. And he took it. And actually, that's my thing that I think the most important thing for me with Chucky this year is that intangible of leadership. This really is his team at this point in time. Mm-hmm. There's been other people there who have been able to filter in. When he got here, you had Turbin and Wagner as really the leaders. Last year, Williams really was able to stand up and do that. This is Keaton's year. I don't know if I've ever seen a more prolific player at getting other people motivated, at spreading his spirit, at being able to say, look, guys, we can come in and make this. You watch shots of him on the sideline. He's constantly motivating. He's constantly working and talking. His stats aside and his athleticism aside, his ability to lead this team, I think, is going to be able to take us to a new level.
I think the thing I love about Chucky is his increased confidence. And I don't mean that in a, like he never had confidence. But you can tell that he really has taken that mantle and he's run with it from what we saw as a freshman in Auburn to where he is now. He's probably the most hyped quarterback maybe ever in Utah State history with all the preseason awards.
I wouldn't say maybe. I would
definitely.
He's
pretty
ever.
freaking good. He
certainly is awfully hyped.
I mean,
right now,
in the lifetime of us young kids that are doing podcasts and stuff, I'd say yeah.
Yeah, but if you talk with Chucky, he hasn't changed. That has not changed who he is or his focus on football. And that is such an important thing. When you look at other quarterbacks that receive a lot of attention.
Who, like Johnny Manziel?
Well, I was going to name names, but Johnny Football. You just look how that has changed him and his public perception of him. It's kind of weighed him down a little bit. He even admitted it as much in an interview, today, that, maybe he's bitten off more than he could chew. And Chucky he's not like that. He just is very cool, calm, collective. That's the type of guy that will deliver in the clutch situations.
Chucky's like Joey Chestnut at the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. He will keep biting off, and he will chew it and swallow every bit of it and win championships. That's what he does. Moving on to number 2. My number 2. This came up earlier on the list, but Maurice Alexander. I think, I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Nevin Lawson and Tay Glover-Wright, we've got a handful of good cornerbacks. And while I think Tay Glover-Wright can be among the best of them and has kind of this extra level of athleticism, I think as far as the defensive backfield's concerned, Maurice Alexander has a lot to prove. We mentioned McCade Brady. Awesome player, fearless, just gutsy, always got it done, it seemed like. And we've seen Alexander's run coverage in the spring game so far. My biggest thing is how is he going to do in pass coverage? Because we need him to be flawless in not getting caught up thinking on maybe a play action. He needs to not bite on that. He needs to be able to stay back, recognize a pass, and be there to assist in pass coverage. Because, I mean, one thing that is nice about him being able to stuff the run, which I think we will do monumentally well this year, is that we already have Brian Sweet, who is an excellent run stuffer. I mean, if you watched that Wisconsin game last year, he was in on everything. Monty Ball, who was a Heisman Trophy favorite going into last year, could not get anything going against Brian Sweet.
Well, I think the other thing that helps with that in Maurice staying home on, particularly a play action, or a pass fake or whatever, is you have an insane linebacking core in
He's
front
going to
of
be
him.
able to trust them.
Yeah,
with
he
everything.
trusts them implicitly because they are
I sure hope so.
awesome. I mean, they are that
Well,
good.
not to mention the defensive line, too, returns a ton.
He doesn't need to bite
the
on that.
front seven are going to be great. We need Maurice Alexander to round it all out because if, with the cornerbacks we have, we're going to be at least pretty good there. But if he rounds it out by being great at the free safety position, we don't have even a single shred of a hole in our defense, which means we're just setting ourselves up for a repeat of last year's excellence.
Is it possible? I'll throw this out there. Is it possible this year's defense is better than last year's?
I think absolutely.
Yes.
I can't think of a single reason why that would not be possible. I mean, granted, we'll be facing tougher competition. The numbers might not show it at year's end. We might have given up a few more yards or a few more points here and there. But this year's defense has an insane amount of talent. Almost everybody back from it, and almost everybody on there a year better than they were a year ago.
Okay, well, to throw out my number 2, we're going back to the receiver position. I'm throwing out to JoJo Natson.
Yeah.
Because I have never seen a receiver who has been able to take it, get hit, laid to the ground, and pop back up ready for the next play. We need someone with sneaky speed out of the backfield to fill that slot role that we had Chuck Jacobs doing last year. We've got a lot of other hyped receivers. Someone's going to be able to pick it up and take the role. I think JoJo proved to us last year he's got hands, he's got speed, and I really think he's got the attitude and that desire to prove himself that's going to be able to stand up this next year.
He made a catch in the spring game, and the thing that stands out to me about JoJo is we all know how small he is and how thin he is. But the kid goes across the middle without any fear, and he's going across the middle against our defense, which we've been raving about this whole podcast, and which has borne fruit. It's a top 10 defense with nasty, nasty hitters. And there's JoJo in the spring game making those little post routes into the middle, and he took a couple licks. From Zach Vigil, I know laid him out. Kyra Fackrell did too. Hops right up, no big deal. On to the next play. Awesome.
He's that guy that can be a playmaking X factor on offense.
Yes.
And we saw it in that touchdown catch he had against, I want to say, Idaho. Was it the last game of the season, the last home game of the season, where it seemed like he just snuck underneath everybody?
No, it was New Mexico State.
It was New Mexico State.
Okay. It seemed like the defense couldn't even see him. It was like he was below everybody's line of sight and snuck to the back corner of the end zone where Chucky's just like, I got this. Bam, hits him with a pass, and
best TD celebration ever, by the way.
Pretty amazing.
That was awesome.
I think my thing there really is there is a reason that the recruiting team went to Florida and picked him up from across the nation to bring him here as a receiver. I think we're going to see that this year.
Number 1. For me, I had to go with Nick Diaz, guys. And this is why.
I knew this. This is why I mentioned that we would be talking more about this later when I brought him up as my number 4.
Sneaky there. I saw what you did. Any team that has BCS aspirations has to be solid on all fronts. Offense, defense, and special teams.
And fans.
We all know that. If you look at last year, guys, this is maddening, but really reflect on this. 2 field goals away from an undefeated season and a BCS bowl spot. That was it. That's all that separated Utah State from that. And if you want to talk about something to hang over the heads of BYU fans, how sweet would it be to hold the fact that little Utah State made it to a BCS bowl before the quest for perfection that the Cougars love to throw out there? To me, special teams is so key, and the kicker really is what is going to make or break Utah State this year. Because I think we're going to be in a lot of close games, guys, especially with the schedule we have, the tough road trip we're starting out with. I mean, 5 of our first 7 on the road. It's brutal. We're going to need a kicker that can consistently make those field goals in order to make a serious run at not only a conference championship, but potentially a major, major bowl. And no team, again, we talked about this with Chucky, that no team who has made the BCS from a non-AQ, everyone has a good quarterback. They also have a good kicker. No non-BCS team has made a BCS bowl that didn't have a kicker that was under 75% field goal accuracy. It is paramount that our kicker be accurate and be able to pull us through in those close games.
Well, I mean, and you talk about the schedule too, is tough games are usually going to be close games, and close games are so often decided by field goal kicking. Mm-hmm. No better example than our only 2 losses last season. I mean, you look, and I mean, look at one of our other close games, Utah. Don't forget, they missed a field goal as time expired in regulation to send us to overtime.
We also missed a PAT in that game as well. That almost cost us that game.
Exactly. So
kicking is key.
When it comes to those close games, kicking is going to be crucial. And if Nick Diaz can be that guy that's going to bury them, especially in the clutch, this team could be set up for some very, very good things. My number 1, I'm sticking with the wide receiver position, much like you did at number 2. And what was your number 5? You had Travis Reynolds on there somewhere. I'm going Ronald Butler. I know it's crazy to dub a junior college transfer who we have not seen on the field in an Aggie uniform yet as the most crucial to this season. But if there was one point that everybody took away from the spring game, it was that wide receiver is a position of concern. And it's legitimate. You saw there was drop passes. We lost 2 very, very good playmakers in Matt Austin and Chuck Jacobs. And we need somebody that can be that do-it-all guy, that can catch balls over the middle, go up and fight for them, that can be the big play threat downfield. And I think Butler, based on his film, based on what we've seen out of him, looks like he can be that guy in every facet. And like we've said, if you have that one top receiver, if he can come in and be that top receiver, all of a sudden Travis Reynolds as a number 2 receiver could be pretty dang good. And Travis Van Leeuwen as one of those kind of bigger possession number 3 receivers,
not too shabby,
really rounds out an offense. And then throw in JoJo Natson as a number 4 to come in and just say, good luck covering this guy with your 4th best cornerback.
And that's not even considering someone like a Hayden Wickers as a freshman who was very highly recruited.
Or
is on the depth chart.
Swindle. Yeah.
As of the media release today, Wickers is actually 2nd on the depth chart.
And that's without even going through a fall camp.
Exactly.
And that's another guy, man. You look at his speed on film, and it is legit. Yeah. That guy could be an absolute player for us, and it's going to be interesting to see how the position shakes out. But Ronald Butler's my number 1 because he has that. He looks to have that potential to do it all.
My thing about Butler is the fact that he, 2012 for his junior college, he had 55 receptions for 870 yards and 13 touchdowns, which means he was averaging something like, I don't even do the math right now, 16 yards per catch, but he scored just about 20% of the time he caught the ball. I mean, you're looking at a receiver who has deep threat potential. He has a body to be able to match it. I think we're just going to see big things out of him. For my number 1, I'm throwing back to the nitty-gritty of the Utah State offense, which is our tight end position, and going with DJ Talavea. Going back to 2 years, you have Taron Lloyd had one of my all-time favorite catches in my Utah State football career, which was during the Auburn game, where you watch him catch the ball, check the sideline, look where he's at, make the stretch for the first down. That kind of attitude was something that set him apart. Last year, Kellen Bartlett had 5 touchdowns on the season. And a lot of times, you'll see Chucky going, I need somewhere to go on a 3rd down situation, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7. It was over the middle on some sort of route to our tight end. DJ Talavea, in my opinion, is a very underrated pass catcher. He's caught a couple amazing passes over his career. Some of them juggling on the sidelines to try to bring things down, securing it in the end zone in that same way.
If I'm not mistaken, he had a juggling catch in the Auburn game on the fake field goal we ran, where it got reviewed. I'm pretty sure they looked at it but determined he caught that ball. And that goes with what you were saying, that he can catch him.
And I think that is the position I think that is really going to solidify our offense. The thing is you only have maybe 2-3 tight ends on the team. We're going to be able to have some wiggle room at wide receiver to see who's going to be able to fill things out. We're pretty secure what's going on at our running back position, and we're going to be able to see that depth chart play out. But you're going to have DJ Talavea, Anderson. You've got a couple other young guys. Derek Keller's going to be potentially coming up through the ranks. Wyatt Houston could be seeing some player time. But we need them to be able to come up and stand up and not only do the run blocking things that they're need to be doing, pass protection when it's needed, but catch the ball out of the backfield too.
We heard it several times from Matt Austin and other guys on the team that said if DJ Talavea had committed to be an offensive lineman, he would be in the NFL as an offensive lineman. He is that good. And who was it? Was it Matt that said that he's the most skilled offensive lineman on the team? He doesn't even play offensive line. He played, in the tight end position.
We've seen it from him, though.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been out there as a run blocker. I mean, 2 years ago, there was those times where we would run out, we'd have the 5 offensive linemen, and then Taron Lloyd and DJ Talavea out there as 6th and 7th blockers, and Robert Turbin had to have just been licking his chops
and
because
you set records
those guys
all over.
were going to plow everyone in their way, and DJ is still going to bring that to the table.
Yeah.
But he's also someone. I mean, when you brought up Matt Austin and those guys coming on the show, they mentioned him as one of the main guys to watch out for on offense next year because they believe in him as a pass catcher.
Well, and I think you bring up an excellent point in that the tight end really is the safety valve that Chucky can go to when things break down. Okay, my receiver 1 is checked. Receiver 2 is checked. Where do I go? I need 5 yards. There's DJ because DJ's a physical freak. No one's bringing him down on first contact. Excellent choice.
He's going to be that get the hell off me receiver for Chucky. When he's going to get it to him, defenders are going to pile onto him, and he's just going to throw him right off him and get an extra 2 or 3 yards.
Well, I'll throw Kerwin Williams actually tweeted to DJ about NCAA 2014, which he was playing, saying that no one could bring him down in the video game. I wholeheartedly believe we're actually going to see it.
EA Sports finally got something right in regards to Utah State.
Well, front rowers, those are our top 5 most important players for Utah State this year. If you have a different top 5, let us know. If you agree with us, hit us up on Twitter at USU Front Row, Facebook. Interact with us. We love it. But I think we all agree, those 5 that we've all presented, mightily important for Utah State to have a successful year.
Hey, should we throw out some honorable mentions of coaches that should be crucial this year?
Let's do it.
I think with coaches, there's been... Gary Anderson was an incredible head coach for Utah State, whether you hate him or love him. But coaching is going to be a big thing this year. For me, my honorable mention goes to Matt Wells at the top. We've never seen him as a head coach. It's his first year. And I'm not so concerned about in-game management, play calling. I wonder how he'll motivate the team. And I think he's done a great job already. But what Gary Anderson was so good at is saying the right thing at the right time, and the guys loved him and loved to play for him because he truly was a player's coach. And I think Matt Wells is cut out of the same mold as Gary Anderson. And, Gary Anderson pretty much handpicked him to fill the vacancy. My honorable mention goes to Matt Wells.
For me, I've got to go with Todd Orlando, the defensive coordinator, mainly because you look at last year, we had Gary Anderson, who was a defensive-minded head coach, and then Dave Aranda, who was the defensive coordinator and great in that capacity as well. So we had 2 very strong defensive-oriented guys within that top 3 of the coaching ranks of the head coach and the 2 coordinators. I think now that all falls onto Todd Orlando to kind of be both of those guys. And having watched him during spring practices and seen how just electric he is and how excited he gets when his players succeed, but also getting in there and showing them, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to do different, here's what you need to do better. I think that's going to go a long way. We need to see the results of that. We need to see Todd Orlando be able to take that on. And you look at his resume and he seems plenty capable, but we need him to be kind of that defensive guy that the roles, I feel, of defensive coordinator and maybe a little bit more are kind of falling on his shoulders with the loss of our defensive-minded head coach.
For me, I'm going to go for Javon Bonite because I think that we have a very underrated coach coaching our wide receivers. You look at the way that Matt Austin talks about him when they're in communication. He literally has basically had the same career that Matt Austin had at our university. They've been here almost the same amount of time. People forget that we put 2 receivers in the NFL this last year. It's something that's for some reason flies over people's heads. You got Chuck Jacobs and Matt Austin, who both at one point signed free agent contracts with NFL teams. Chuck Jacobs came out of nowhere and was able to step into this team and fill a role. The number one position that most people are worried about and has been unproven for us this year is going to be our wide receivers. And I think Bo Knight is going to be able to step up and really be able to train them in the way that he's been able to work on his other receivers in the past to take over things. I've got a friend one of my coworkers actually, who is a huge Wyoming fan, has been his whole life, and he says that Bo Knight is one of his favorite receivers he's ever seen play the game. The guy's got talent, he can teach it, and I think a huge responsibility is falling on him this year in order to be able to get our offense clicking. I think he's going to be able to step up to the task.
We've asked you to chime in as well. It's the tweet sheet. All right, we asked front rowers everywhere to give us their top 5, so that's what this tweet sheet is about, but there's a few questions in there as well. John Allen tweets in, he says, what legitimate steps can USU take to get USU baseball to NCAA Division I status in the Mountain West?
Oof, that is...
That's a good question.
That is a lofty expectation there. Honestly, I think before we're ever going to see that, we're going to need to see Cache Valley expand to the size of a market that could be home to a minor league baseball team that would build a stadium, which might require a dome over it based on the climate. Or depending on which league it's in, that there's some minor leagues that start later in the year. Boise has a team that's a short season AAA affiliate, but I think if Cache Valley had a minor league baseball team that maybe the university could, also host the baseball team there, it could be a possibility. But it's still one of those things that a lot of it comes down to money, where it's an expensive sport to be able to play. There's going to be a ton of travel. And it's not a friendly climate. I mean, how many women's softball games every year get rained out? It seems like a dozen.
Women's softball doesn't even start playing here until mid-April because of the weather. But don't forget, you have to add a women's sport as well with Title IX.
Yeah.
You'd have to add, a full-on women's sport, and that takes up scholarships, money, traveling expenses for that. So you're not just adding one sport to Division I status, you're adding two with that. So it's a lofty thing. I think a lot of people would like to see it happen.
It would no doubt be cool, and I think
it would be cool. But
it's really cool what the baseball team did with being national champions in 2012, and they just barely missed an at-large bid to the regionals this year. The University of Oregon, I believe, it was down to them and Oregon, and they took Dubs. Oregon. Yeah, I know. Where's the love for the defending champs? But it's one of those things where it's unlikely. As much as I love these guys, I did the public address for them for their home series in April. How many of those guys are going to be able to transition to D1? How many of them even have eligibility? A lot of these guys at the club level are not subject to the same rules that the NCAA has about when your clock starts ticking. And so it's just one of those things where I would love it. I love baseball, but I just don't see it happening anytime soon, especially not until probably Cache Valley has maybe a minor league baseball team, which really, you look at the market size, it's not that outrageous to think could happen sometime in the future.
Lauren tweets in, new follower on Twitter this week, by the way, so shout out to Lauren for following us on Twitter. With 4 seniors on the offensive line, is there any chance that we rotate underclassmen in for experience?
I think definitely late in games. If we have a big lead, there's a handful of guys that I think we're going to see kind of step in there. And that's actually one storyline that I'm really excited to kind of hear about in fall camp, and really as the season goes on, is who of these young O-linemen is really going to step up and shine, because last year there wasn't much of that. We have Logan Malifou. I hope I said that right. I'm usually decent with the Polynesian names. He would come in. He was kind of the next guy in line. There was a game where Tyler Larson tweaked an ankle real quick and came out for just like 2 plays, but what happens is Jamie Markosian would shift to center, Kyle Wimpy would shift to left guard, I believe, and Eric Schultz would go to right guard with Markosian at right tackle. So it was this weird shift that all happened, but it's going to be something where we need to see these young guys really establish themselves now and prepare to take over.
We talked about in our recruiting podcast that we did last year, Joe Malenga and Tyshawn Mosley, 2 guys who were highly recruited that we absolutely loved. We thought they were primed to come in and get backup roles on the offensive line and really be the type of guys that you build your next great offensive line around.
And now we need them to show that.
Well, and I think another big thing is we do have a lot of youth at the O-line position. There's not a lot of juniors who actually are on the O-line from the roster I'm looking at right now. It's heavy laden on the senior end, but then you've got a lot of sophomores and freshmen coming in. And we also remember that we brought in a JC transfer, Austin Stevens, out of Iowa Western, who actually is brought here specifically to come in and fill that center spot over as a backup to Tyler Larson this year, and then to be able to come in for next year. I think one of the key things is we still get to hold on to the majority of we'll be returning hopefully all of our quarterbacks next year. The majority of our running backs are going to be coming back. Mm-hmm. The major shift you're going to see in our offense next year is going to be that O-line is going to be leaving. Everyone else is going to be holding pretty steady as far as who is going to be returning. I think that's going to be a huge thing about logging experience hours in for them for next year and seeing what they're able to pull off. We've got a lot of size and a lot of talent. It's going to be awesome to see them prove themselves toward the end of the season.
I think names to keep an eye on there for those late in games. I mean, just picks of mine. Austin Stevens, I think we'll see at center. Tani Fasilau is another guy that I think got a decent amount of reps last year late in games. Austin Albrecht is a guy that I think we'll probably see a decent amount of this year in garbage time. And then, who I mentioned, Logan Malahifou. And then I guess whoever's next in that, really it's going to be exciting to see whoever steps up. But those are kind of the guys that I would say keep an eye on in those late game situations, guys who are young but have redshirted and have had time to learn and could be primed for those roles in the near future.
The one I'll shout out is Bryce Walker. I mean, he's 6'8", 330 pounds. The man is massive. And I think he's right now, as far as the depth chart shows for this season, he's sitting third. But I think you could see him work his way up, and he's got another 2 years to play for us. So,
a couple of you chimed in with your top 5 of important Aggie players this year. Troy chimes in. He says Joe Hill, Chucky Keaton, Tyler Larson, Brandon Swindle, and the corner opposite Lawson. So take over, right? Ogden Aggie tweets in. He says Larson, Keaton, Diaz, Hill, and Alexander. Chico tweets in Keaton, Reynolds, Lawson, Hill, and Diaz. So I think a lot of them are
like-minded people. Similar ideas on the top 5.
Yeah.
Derek, pay attention, front rowers.
Derek tweets in, this should probably be a quick answer. With the Weber State game sandwiched in between big games, is there any chance that Utah State loses focus against Weber State? No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Not going to happen.
This team's too talented now. Maybe like 5 years ago where we were as a team trying to focus and win those big games. Even then, though, Weber State was kind of that easy win that we knew, don't let this one get away.
They're picked like 10th in the Big Sky. No.
Well, and
it's
on top of that,
not happening.
You may see it, the score may not be 63-7, but it's because we're going to get a lot of people rested up that week, and you're going to see a lot of our young experience come in and get experience that game.
Yep. Lance, you talked about before the show about making the offensive line, your 5. You're not alone in being a genius on that. Brett tweets in the front 5.
I love Brett.
Brett sounds awesome.
Brett sounds great.
Nick Arnold tweets in. He says, what is the backup quarterback situation like for this upcoming year? The guy we always talk about, we bring back Craig Harrison. He follows us, good friend of the program. Daryl Garrettson, guys, highly recruited quarterback, Gatorade Player of the Year in Arizona, which produces a ton of Division I talent. He's no slouch. I know a lot of people were upset over losing Damian Hobbs to Oregon. Daryl Garrettson, guys, is a gunslinger, and I'm excited about him as a quarterback.
I think one thing to keep in mind with that is you look at the preseason depth chart that got released with the media guide. Chucky Keaton's obviously number 1, but then behind him they have Craig Harrison or Jeff Manning or Jordan Brown. The or designates that this is very clear-cut a battle still. Mm-hmm. So I think as far as the backup spot is concerned, those guys are going to be battling it out. If I were a guessing man, which I am, I'm going to say Daryl Garrettson redshirts this year.
I would hope so.
I think that's what they want to be able to do as a coaching staff. Just to you want to preserve that if you think he's your future starter. And obviously, plenty has got to change. He's still got a ton of work to put in and plenty to prove. But if you're able to redshirt him and he shows in practice that he's capable, when Chucky's a senior and we got garbage time to throw around to these young guys, if he's able to come in as a redshirt freshman and really show something off, that could really open things up. As for now, I would bet that Craig Harrison holds on to that backup job.
Nick also tweets in with his 5, Keaton, Reynolds, Hill, Diaz, and Mo Alexander. Excellent. Our favorite uncle, Uncle Brian, tweets in. And he says, for his 5, that Chucky definitely needs to stay healthy. He has 2 wide receivers in his top 5 that need to step up. Mo Alexander and Nevin Lawson.
Who are the wide receivers?
He doesn't say, but he just says
2
we need
wide
2.
Two wide receivers. Okay, nice.
Okay.
We'll go with it.
I'm on board.
Brett Brinkerhoff tweets in. He says, how is Joe Natson looking, and is he going to be able to be a valuable slot receiver that we're looking for?
Joe Natson is looking like he's number 2 on my list. That's what it looks like.
Booyah.
Thanks, everyone, for sending us in the tweet sheet. Always a fan favorite as well. And
Tweet us
anytime.
throughout the week
All
for
the
next
time.
week's show at USU Front Row on Twitter. And follow us and tell your friends to follow us. And tell them if they don't follow us,
They're not cool.
I might come after them. And I'm not small. Just kidding. We're not about threats here.
Just punching random people on the street.
You didn't follow the Front Row Show on Twitter. Come on. You did this to yourself. Violence aside, which we obviously don't condone, at the end of every show, we like to hand off the mic to one of our own for a segment we call the rant. And this week, in his 2nd episode with us, we're handing it to the new guy, the rookie. Ladies and gentlemen, this week's rant comes to you courtesy of Mr. Lance Rasmussen.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
I come from a bit of a different walk than a lot of the sports fans out there in the world. To give you a little bit of fill-in, I'm a theater major at Utah State right now, and I'm in a building most of the time which really doesn't gel with what's going on in a lot of stuff on the sports side of the world. I don't understand the mentality change. I don't understand where the disconnect is. And it was really interesting for me to actually step back. One of my professors went to a game. He went to his first basketball game in a while. He's a Utah State grad who went out and did his master's work in Jersey at Rutgers, came home again. He went to a game and he pulled me aside after because he knows that I am a huge fan of everything that goes on at the university. And he pulled me aside and said, look, there is more drama that happens in the Spectrum than happens on our stage all year long. He goes, you go to one game there, and there is more emotion, and there is more power in what happens there than what we have on stage. And for me, what it comes down to is the fact that you have people who are uninhibitedly willing to lend what they have to what's going on the court. A basketball game doesn't mean nearly as much without people there to watch it. And I think what we've seen on this university for a long time with a lot of what's going on with a lot of trouble with the marching band in the past, there hasn't been a lot of oomph there saying we want to go out and support. There hasn't been a lot of stuff that goes on and support from a lot of the people who aren't classic sports fans. And for me, I look at it and go, I have people in my classes who I know have never just with complete inhibition screamed in their life. I do it regularly, several times a game, a year. I have people in there who have never, for 100%, felt the joy of, together with thousands of people, yelling in unison to be able to support something that's going on the court. My rant today is about the fact that there is this mentality change between the intellectual and what is perceived to be the dumb jock persona of the world. I don't think it's that big. One of the great talents in the theater world is improv comedy, something that people look at and go, oh, it's so great, they're so witty, they're so quick, and they do all of these things. All improv comedy is acting under a specific set of rules in an enclosed environment, which, guess what? That's sports. If I walk into a theater classroom and say, all right, here's 2 baskets on either side of the room, each one of you have a ball on your side, and your objective is to try to get this in. They're going to look at it like a master class. They're going to walk away going, wow, I learned so much about how to act uninhibited and do all of this kind of stuff. That's all sports is. This is my unifying rant out there for all of my theater friends, my musician friends, and those who look and go, sports, all it is a guy passing a ball to another guy. I don't understand it. It takes so much to be involved in sports. The mentality, the intelligence, the ability is so much more than what we imagine. I'm not saying it's any more important or any more difficult than what we do with our lives, but it's about time that we as a arts side of things, as the intellectual side of the world, begin to respect and look at these people as gifted and saying what they do has just as much value as what I do. When you can go and bring happiness to people's lives by playing sports, or you can bring happiness to people's lives by being in a play or playing music, it really all comes down to the same thing. It's about what your passions are in life. This is my encouragement shout out to those of you who have friends who aren't really sports fans, who don't understand it. Find them, explain to them. And it's my personal opinion that once people learn the breakdown of what sports really bring to the table, that you're going to be a fan no matter what. You may not be diehard, you may not be dressing up and painting your chest for every game, but the inherent nature of what sports is intrinsic to our society. And I personally have found a great love for it. I think everyone else can.
Yes!
Yeah!
Yes! Woo! Nailed it!
Best rant ever. Oh, I got goosebumps. Chills.
Getting that word out to everyone else that hasn't experienced it. And like you said, it's an experience. And if you come and you commit to it and you let it be exciting and you find joy in it, just like you would a play, you can go. I mean, if you go to a musical thinking, oh, this is going to be boring, it's all going to be scripted, of course you're not going to like it. But if you go expecting quality performance and seeing people do things you can't do and appreciating every bit of it, oh, you're going to love it.
I tell you what, Lance Rasmussen coming to a podium near you.
Guns blazing. Let's do this.
Well, this has been an excellent late-night version of the Front Row Show. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, check us out on Twitter at USU Front Row, the Facebook page, YouTube channel as well. And Lance also has a reminder for Aggie Nation out there.
Just for everyone to get the shout-out one more time, today, when the podcast comes out, we have another service opportunity at the Strength and Conditioning Center. They're asking for a few more volunteers to show up. I believe Aggies Forever, who I have no idea who he is in the production line of this project, but he's somewhere involved, has said if they can get 50 people up there tomorrow, work gloves, rakes, shovels, they're going to be spreading some gravel, laying some sod. It's going to be quick work. They're having the teams are supposed to be coming out. The football players said they'll be showing up to some degree. So get out there, support the university. This is something you can do to really help our image and get that center finished up in time for the new season coming in.
Thursday, July 18th is the date.
At 5
Thursday.
p.m.
So if you're listening to this later, it's July 19th. You missed it. Don't go out there and well, I mean, go out and help if you can, but like, just don't go out there and be like, Front Row Show told me I was going to be out there helping and no one was there. Thursday, July 18th is the day.
Front Rowers unite for this cause. For the Front Row Show, I'm Jeff Browning.
I'm Lance Rasmussen.
And I'm Matt Sonnenberg.
Go Aggies! So do you know we're being followed on Twitter by Confused Mormon Girl?
I figured we were probably being followed by a few of those.
It's just interesting.
Hey, Aggie fans, thanks again for listening to this episode of The Front Row Show. Be sure to download all our archived episodes on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at USU Front Row. Like our page on Facebook at facebook.com/USU Front Row. And subscribe to us on our new YouTube channel at youtube.com/USU Front Row. Go Aggies.